Can you tell us how this affects people's properties values once you designate this area as slum? And then will there be any property transfers as a result of this from possibly, as I've heard something about eminent domain being possible?
Let's go to the question relative to the impacts on people's property values. Inherently, the condition of the area is being taken into the property values as they stand currently. So one of the contributing factors relative to blighted, substandard, or deteriorated and deteriorating is the issue relative to environmental contamination on a property that may be adjacent to property that you own. The market has actually taken into account that issue in terms of the effect of that condition on your property. So ultimately, when we go in and we remediate a brownfield or a contaminated site, that condition is then removed. And that ultimately lifts up the value associated with not just the property that was contaminated, but the properties that are around it. And if you own a house next to a contractor yard, if that contractor yard is moved to a more appropriate location, the value associated with the properties that were around that contractor yard, not just the contractor yard, ultimately come up.
And what about the eminent domain situation?
The council ultimately has the authority relative to eminent domain, not the redevelopment agency. So the council has to make a determination as to whether it wants to invoke the powers, the city's powers conveyed to it by the state relative to eminent domain. At this point in time, we're not the redevelopment agency isn't contemplating utilizing eminent domain in the TOD district. And the previous councils, and I would assume this existing council, have made it fairly clear that there's not a legislative appetite to entertain eminent domain unless it might be an issue of friendly eminent domain taking, which ultimately is a situation where the landowner is seeking the city to actually take the property by eminent domain because there's a direct benefit to the property owner to do so.